For decades, science taught a simple and straightforward story about how the first humans reached the Americas. Around 13,000 years ago, hunters from Siberia crossed a land bridge called Beringia that connected Asia to North America during the last ice age, when sea levels were much lower. These hunters brought with them distinctive stone tools, fluted spear points known as Clovis points, and spread rapidly across the continent, becoming the ancestors of all Native American peoples. This was the Clovis first theory, taught in every textbook, displayed in every museum. But there was a massive problem with this narrative. Human footprints in New Mexico dated to 23,000 years ago, archaeological sites in Chile over 14,000 years old, and now, ancient DNA extracted from bones found in Alaska that is completely rewriting our understanding of who the first Americans really were and when they actually arrived. In 2013, a team of paleontologists working at the Upward Sun River site in central Alaska made an extraordinary discovery. In an ancient hearth, a circular fireplace used by people over 11,000 years ago, they found the remains of two infants who had been ceremonially buried together. The site showed evidence of careful, deliberate burial practices, red ochre pigment, grave offerings, and positioning that suggested deep respect and ritual significance. But what made these remains truly revolutionary was their age and the quality of DNA preservation. Radiocarbon dating confirmed the infants died approximately 11,500 years ago, making them among the oldest human remains ever found in North America. And incredibly, despite their age, the cold Alaskan permafrost had preserved enough DNA in their bones to allow complete genome sequencing. When geneticists led by Eske Willerslev at the University of Copenhagen successfully extracted and sequenced the DNA from these ancient infants in 2018, what they found was shocking. The genetic data revealed that these children belonged to a previously unknown population, a distinct group that scientists now call the ancient Beringians. This wasn't just another branch of known Native American ancestry. This was a completely separate lineage that had split from other Native American ancestors approximately 20,000 years ago and had remained genetically isolated in Alaska for thousands of years. The implications were staggering. It meant that the peopling of the Americas was far more complex than anyone had imagined, involving multiple populations, extended periods of isolation, and waves of migration that we're only now beginning to understand. To grasp why this discovery is so revolutionary, we need to understand what the DNA actually revealed. When scientists sequence ancient genomes, they're looking at billions of genetic markers that can be compared with DNA from modern populations and other ancient samples. From the Upward Sun River infants, researchers successfully sequenced high-quality genomes with enough coverage to make detailed comparisons. The analysis showed that all Native Americans, from the Arctic to Tierra del Fuego, share a common ancestry tracing back to populations that lived in Beringia, the land bridge region between Siberia and Alaska. But the big surprise was the timing and structure of how these populations split apart. The genetic data revealed that around 36,000 years ago, the ancestors of Native Americans separated from East Asian populations. This early split happened in Siberia, long before anyone crossed into the Americas. Then, approximately 25,000 to 20,000 years ago, these Beringian populations themselves split into at least two distinct groups. One group would eventually give rise to all modern Native Americans in North and South America. But the other group, the ancient Beringians represented by the Upward Sun River infants, stayed in Alaska and remained genetically isolated for thousands of years. This meant that by 11,500 years ago, when these infants were born, there were already at least two distinct ancestral populations in North America, with separate evolutionary histories spanning millennia. The ancient Beringian discovery solved several puzzles that had been troubling archaeologists and geneticists. First, it explained the archaeological diversity seen in early North American sites. Not all early stone tools look like Clovis points. Some sites have different technologies, different settlement patterns, different subsistence strategies. If there were multiple founding populations with distinct cultural traditions, this diversity makes perfect sense. Second, it explained certain genetic quirks found in modern Native American populations. Some indigenous groups in Alaska and northern Canada carried genetic signatures that didn't fit neatly into existing models. The ancient Beringian lineage, even though it may have largely disappeared or been absorbed into later populations, left genetic traces that persist today. But perhaps the most profound implication involves timing. If the ancient Beringians split from other Native American ancestors 20,000 years ago, and both groups were already in or near Alaska, it means humans must have reached Beringia significantly earlier than 13,000 years ago. The genetic data suggests that ancestral populations were living in Beringia, the land bridge region, potentially for thousands of years before moving further into the Americas. This period, sometimes called the Beringian standstill, may have lasted from roughly 25,000 to 15,000 years ago. During this time, massive ice sheets blocked routes into the interior of North America. The populations couldn't move south, so they remained in Beringia and nearby ice-free areas of Alaska, developing unique genetic and cultural characteristics. The Upward Sun River infants' genomes also revealed details about their physical characteristics and adaptations. Genetic markers indicated they likely had brown eyes, dark hair, and skin tone adapted to northern latitudes with reduced sun exposure. Analysis of genes related to metabolism showed adaptations for high-fat diets, crucial for survival in Arctic environments where traditional plant foods are scarce. The genome also showed genetic variants associated with cold adaptation, similar to those found in modern indigenous Arctic peoples. These weren't people just passing through Alaska on their way south. They were adapted to living there, thriving in one of Earth's harshest environments. The DNA also shed light on what happened to the ancient Beringians. Genetic analysis of modern native Alaskan and Canadian populations shows that while the ancient Beringian lineage as a distinct group seems to have disappeared by around 6,000 years ago, they didn't vanish without a trace. There was genetic mixing between ancient Beringians and later populations that moved into Alaska. Modern Athabascan peoples, Inuit, and other northern indigenous groups carry small amounts of ancient Beringian ancestry, fragments of this ancient lineage preserved in their genomes. The ancient Beringians were either absorbed into later arriving populations or were displaced and gradually lost their genetic distinctiveness through intermarriage. This discovery fundamentally challenges the Clovis first model. It's now clear that the Americas weren't peopled by a single migration event 13,000 years ago. Instead, there were likely multiple waves of migration, extended periods of population isolation and development in Beringia and Alaska, and complex patterns of movement, mixing, and separation that played out over at least 10,000 years. Some researchers now propose that there may have been even earlier migrations, possibly as far back as 30,000 years ago, though evidence for such early presence remains controversial and debated. The Upward Sun River discovery also highlights how much ancient DNA technology has revolutionized our understanding of human history. Just 20 years ago, extracting usable DNA from 11,500-year-old bones would have been impossible. The techniques didn't exist, the technology wasn't sophisticated enough, and contamination was a constant problem. But advances in DNA sequencing, particularly methods designed for ancient and degraded DNA, have opened a window into the past that was previously closed. We can now answer questions about ancestry, migration, and population relationships that were simply unanswerable using traditional archaeology alone. The study of the ancient Beringians also demonstrates the importance of treating ancient remains with respect and working collaboratively with indigenous communities. The researchers worked closely with local Alaska Native communities throughout the research process, consulting about the study, sharing findings, and ultimately ensuring the remains were reburied according to traditional practices. This collaborative approach recognizes that these aren't just scientific specimens, but ancestors of living peoples who have deep cultural and spiritual connections to these lands. Looking forward, the ancient Beringian discovery raises as many questions as it answers. Were there other distinct founding populations that we haven't yet discovered? What happened to the ancient Beringians after 6,000 years ago? Why did they seem to remain so isolated for so long? How many waves of migration actually occurred? As more ancient DNA is recovered from sites across the Americas, particularly from the critical 15,000 to 10,000 year ago period, we'll continue to refine and revise our understanding. Each new genome is like adding a piece to an enormous, complex puzzle. And sometimes, as with the Upward Sun River infants, a single puzzle piece can reveal that the picture we thought we were building was wrong all along. The The story of the first Americans is far richer, more complex, and more fascinating than the simple narrative we once believed. It's a story of multiple migrations, of populations adapting to extreme environments, of long periods of isolation followed by contact and mixing, of cultural and genetic diversity that developed over thousands of years across two vast continents. And it's a story that we're still writing, with each new discovery, each ancient genome, adding depth and detail to our understanding of humanity's incredible journey. Thanks for watching. If you found this revelation about the oldest DNA and the first Americans fascinating, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Let us know in the comments what other ancient DNA mysteries you'd like us to explore. Until next time, keep questioning what we think we know about human history.